My name is Pamela Johnson. 72 years well lived, and many others only survived. I was a nurse for almost 4 decades. I saw more people leave than I would like, but I never imagined that the greatest pain of my life would come from those I gave birth to with my own hands. Have you ever heard from a child's mouth the phrase, "The best gift would be if you just died"? Well, I heard, and it wasn't in an outbreak, in a moment of anger. No, it was in a calm, almost polite tone, like someone who asks for sugar in coffee. It's hard to understand, no, isn't it? We spend our whole lives giving ourselves, thinking that love is synonymous with presence, that caring is enough, that sacrificing everything for a child is a guarantee of respect. But I learned, in the most bitter way, why, if you've ever wondered how far the selfishness of someone you love goes, or mother can do after being treated like a burden, then this video is for you. Today I'm going to tell you how a sentence killed a part of me, and how, in silence, I gave the fairest payback that my heart could bear. Because sometimes love also needs to go away. But before we dive into the heart of this story, God, on Nigerian Citadel cast, in case I'm lost, and I need you to know one thing. Not all betrayal comes with screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes it comes in a whisper, no, in the middle of an icy congratulations, with an indifferent look and a sentence that cuts deeper than any knife. The best gift would be if you just died. These words did not come from a stranger. They came out of my daughter's mouth. Oh, on the day of his own birthday. And me? I just got up from the table, with the cake still untouched, and walked away. But not to cry. I left to change everything, because sometimes it is in silence that justice begins. If you're hearing this right now, it's because maybe you've also kept pains that you've never told anyone. And if this story touches you in any way, if you remember something you lived or felt, I ask you with affection, leave your like, subscribe, and stay here with me. It's not to help me with numbers. It's just so I don't feel so alone while telling this. Because opening your chest like this, after so much hurt, hurts more than I imagined. I've always been the type who prefers to give than ask. I grew up like that. At my house in Alabama, my mother used to say that a strong woman is one who serves without expecting applause. Maybe that's why, even after retirement, I could never stand still. My little garden in Frogtown was my refuge. Lavender, hydrangeas, thyme. Everything is taken care of with my own hands, even with my knees already taking a toll on me for years. On Sundays, I made cakes and took them to the neighbors. On Wednesdays, I visited Donna Eliza, a widowed lady who lived 3 blocks above mine and needed help with insulin. It was a simple life, but full of meaning. But the one that occupied my time the most was Lauren. Every Monday and Thursday I would get in the car and drive to Eden Prairie, almost an hour on the road. He arrived early to have time to prepare the boys' breakfast, pack the lunchboxes, review the school's homework. Lauren wrote everything down, that one of the twins could not have milk, that the other had a choir rehearsal. I did everything with zeal. If it rained, why, I picked them both up with a cape and umbrella. If they were sick, I slept on the sofa in the living room, keeping an eye out for any coughs. It was not an obligation. It was love. Mother's love. Grandmother's love. And also a little nostalgia for what I didn't have. Lauren was my only child. After I lost my husband, a Vietnam War veteran, in his early 40s, she was the one who kept me standing. And so I swore to myself that she would never go through the deprivations I faced. Her house was modern, and historical de proud, and nothing cur, a mustogel, a chojisen. Large, full of windows and hallways that echoed the footsteps of the children. Tom, me, her husband, was too quiet for my taste, always with the laptop on the table, always tired. I would try to start a conversation, but he would just say, "Thank you, Pamela," and go back to the computer. And here's what I'm seeing. Not even that. Lauren, well, on the other hand, was practical. They didn't. Too much practice. When I arrived, she would leave her to-do list on the fridge and leave in a hurry to work. "Mom, can you just check if they ate it all? Ben's too lazy to chew." I said yes. Of course. I always said yes. But something has changed. Little by little. In the early years, she sent me messages of thanks. Mom, you're amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you." Later, he started to send only hearts. Then, he only answered when I asked for something, which was almost never for me. It was about some consultation or medicine for the boys. One day, I left an envelope with money on the table because I heard that Tom was unemployed. She just replied, "And how? Oh, I saw you left something. Is that it?" And yet, I kept going, because that's what mothers do. Isn't it? We give ourselves. We plug the hole, hold the bar, swallow hard. Listen here. One Saturday, I remember well, I was sitting in the living room while the boys played on the floor. I heard Lauren say to Tom in the hallway, "Isn't she ever going to stop?" Hey, I just wanted a Saturday without her. I pretended I didn't hear. I smiled, played with the boys, and left early. On the way back, I stopped the car in a pharmacy parking lot and cried for 20 minutes without knowing the exact reason. It was as if I was realizing a truth that my heart did not want to accept. Allow me to pause here. Mayone and Farwayton Town and Octopus City. Because I know there are a lot of people on the other side of the screen who have experienced this. Have you ever felt that twinge? That feeling of being left over in the life of the one you loved the most? If you understand what that is, comment here with I've lived it. Or it touched me. Not for me, but so that other women like us know that they are not alone. I kept saying to myself, it's just stress. She's overwhelmed. No. And he came back. He came back because he didn't know not to come back. With my knees hurting, with my heart even more so. One day, wow, I left the house at 6 in the morning with an apple pie on my lap. I arrived and the house was empty. Lauren had forgotten to let me know they were going to be away for the weekend. She left a note. Wow, I forgot to warn you. Mom, I didn't have to come. That hurt more than it seems. It was there that I started to store things inside, like someone who starts to fill a suitcase that one day he will no longer carry. But I didn't know yet what awaited me, because what she told me on that birthday, it wasn't just a cruel phrase. It was a sentence that took away everything I thought still had with her. And the worst thing is that it was said with the calm of someone who asks for silence in the library. But what leads a daughter to say such a thing to her own mother? Another. That's what you're going to understand. Now, I think that every mother, or dad and dog, okay, one day feels when something changes in her child's way. You don't have to say anything. The body speaks. The silence responds. I started noticing it first in the calls. Before, Lauren would call me in the middle of the afternoon just to tell me that the boys had made a mess, or that Tom had forgotten the trash again. Later, the calls turned into messages. After the messages came the 5-second audios. And finally, nothingness. I would say, why, hi, daughter, Kylan, why'd you say you're all my, how are you? And received a busy now. Sometimes, not even that. I thought it was a face, that she was tired, or that something at work was difficult. But mother does. And I felt that, in some way, I was bothering you. I started to go to their house less often. But even so, when I arrived, the reception was no longer the same. Lauren didn't even look at me properly. Hi, Mom, she said. Dear, and you, without taking her eyes off her phone. Sometimes I didn't even get up from the couch. And Tom seemed uncomfortable with my presence. Once, between one spoonful of cereal and another. Well, he said, Lee, the house is getting small, isn't it? He didn't look at me when he spoke, but I listened. Well, I heard it as if I had screamed. Deep down, I began to understand that for them, I was an old piece of furniture. Useful, no doubt, but annoying, and the signs have not stopped. One day, I went to take the boys to the pediatrician, as agreed, and Lauren was not home. I had forgotten. He left a post-it note on the door with the phrase, remarked, I warn you. Is that it? Not a single call. Not even an excuse. Another time, they canceled a dinner that I had suggested myself. At the last minute. Tom's not well, she said. But when I went on Facebook at night, I saw a photo of the two of them in a restaurant with friends. Smile. They drank wine. I closed the app right away. I didn't cry. No, not at that moment. But something inside me broke. I started writing in an old notebook that I kept from the hospital. I wrote at dawn, sitting in my kitchen with chamomile tea and silence. He wrote everything down. The dry phrases, the ignored invitations, the cold looks. On one of the pages, I wrote, maybe I'm exaggerating, or maybe I'm really left over. That's what I asked myself every day. Does being a mother have an expiration date? Could it be that after a certain age, we stop being welcome? And why does it hurt more than any wound I've ever treated as a nurse? I tried to talk to her once. He said, very slowly, Lauren, you are far away. Did I do something that hurt you? She looked at me as if looking at a child who doesn't understand the adult's game. And he said, oh, Mom, it doesn't start with drama. Please. I kept quiet. I always kept quiet. Because my generation learned like this. Whoever loves, swallows hard. Nihil. But that question kept haunting me for days, nights, like an echo. Was I really being a burden? Have I become the nuisance that no one has the courage to take out of the room? And it was with this in mind that I began to see the things that I had previously avoided seeing. And the worst thing is that when we start to see, there is no way to unsee. But what I saw on her birthday, it was not just indifference. It was something else. It was contempt. That's it? No one is prepared to feel coming from a child. What happened that day still keeps me up at night, because that's where I found out how far a daughter can go when he forgets who put him in the world. Well, that day, I woke up early, earlier than usual. I had already separated the light blue long-sleeved dress and ironed it the night before. I made sure to tie my hair back like I used to, with a pearl brooch that Lauren loved when she was little. I got in my car at 8:15 and went to the French bakery on Grand Avenue, the same one where I bought the twins' christening cake. I chose a raspberry cream cake with Belgian chocolate frosting. $200. I didn't even look at the price at the time, because a mother's love has no receipt. I asked them to put happy birthday, Lauren, in gold letters, and waited 30 minutes just to make sure it was perfect. As I drove to Eden Prairie, I imagined her smile when she saw the cake, the grandchildren running to the table. Tom, maybe praising my care. But what awaited me in that house was something else. I arrived 10 minutes before the agreed time. I knocked on the door with a light heart, holding the cake with both hands, as if carrying a precious gift. Lauren opened it. No smile, no into Truxell Tom, no hug, just a sigh and a caw. Oh, fine. It's you. I stood still for a second. I felt my face heat up. She opened the door and went back inside the house, letting me in alone. The room was tidy. That's true. But it didn't smell like food, nor music, nor that party noise I expected. Tom was sitting at the computer with headphones in his ears. He didn't even look up. The boys were hypnotized in front of the TV. No one said, "I'm glad you came," or "What a beautiful cake." I went to the kitchen and placed the cake on the table carefully. I took out the box, adjusted the cover, looked for the candles inside the bag. I tried to start a conversation with the boys, but they only nodded, without taking their eyes off the screen. No, I stood there, feeling a silence that felt more like a weight. Lauren appeared in the kitchen and, without looking me in the eye, said, Lena, what seemed so gone? Sit down. Now, we need to talk. I sat down, oh, slowly, with a heavy heart. She stood, arms crossed, and said in the calmest voice in the world, What for what? Mom, the best birthday present would be if you just died. I can't explain what I felt. It was as if the ground had sunk and I was still there, trying to breathe. My first impulse was to think that I heard it wrong. I asked her to repeat it. She repeated, I am the same way. You dying would solve a lot. Mom, sorry, but the truth. Tom was still on the computer. The boys in the living room. Nobody listened? No one listened. But I listened. Each syllable, each letter. And yet, I didn't cry. Not at that moment. I looked at her. I was silent. I grabbed my bag, stood up carefully, and said, Why, when he's so young, you have to Tycho. Happy birthday. Lauren, I passed through the room, took one last look at the boys, and left with a cake still whole on the table. In the car, noon. The only thing I could think was, is this really what I heard? Can a daughter really say that to her mother? And what does a mother do after that? Return? Forgive? Or disappears? I don't know how long I stood there, sitting in that chair, listening to those words float in the air as if they were nothing, as if they had no weight, as if they were not poison. The best birthday present would be if you just died. I repeated the phrase in my head, trying to find a crack of irony. A trace of nervousness on her face, something that indicated that it was just a miscalculated outburst. But it wasn't. Lauren spoke with the calm of someone who only says the obvious, with the coldness of someone who no longer feels. My eyes looked for some reaction on Tom's face, but he didn't take his eyes off the screen. He kept clicking, oblivious, as if he had heard nothing. The boys laughed at some nonsense in the cartoon, and there I was, alone, invisible, sick with amazement. The only thing that kept me standing at that moment was the cake, the damn cake. So beautiful, so expensive, so unnecessary. I found myself looking at him and trying to remember why he had spent so much money, why he had chosen that bakery, why he still made a point of decorating the birthdays of a daughter who no longer wanted me around. The answer came painfully. Because I still believed that I could be loved. Do you understand? Mom, she asked, as if to explain something obvious. And I, with a dry, choked voice, replied, You? Do you want me to die? She let out an impatient sigh. I want some peace. You're always here, always messing around, always making drama out of everything. no longer a child, mere stitch on child. Mother, I don't need you to sort out my life. Those words crossed me in a way that not even your father's grief could, because that wasn't just rejection. It was as if she had taken away my right to exist, as if my presence was dead weight. I took a deep breath. I got up slowly. I grabbed my bag. I looked at the cake once again. Her name written in gold. Liwana Harsachuntiram. Founds. And then I said, "Why?" in the firmest voice I could muster inside me. "Happy birthday, Lauren Wayne." I turned my back. I crossed the room as someone carrying shards of glass in my heart. I left without looking at the boys, without looking back. In the car, and in a case, I sat with my hands on the wheel for almost half an hour before I was able to start. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, staring at nothing, trying to understand how a mother goes through a pain that has no name. Im here, Munbao, net, town. Now, sharing this story with you, because keeping it to myself has become a wound that doesn't heal. And if you've made it this far, if it touched you in any way, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a way of telling me that there's someone there listening to me, that I'm not talking to myself, because there's still a lot I need to tell, and many people who need to know that they are not alone either. The return home that day was long, not because of the distance, but because something inside me began to break in silence. And when the silence begins to scream, it's because we're about to do something we've never done before. Do you know what it is? I found out about it the next morning, and it was on that night that I made my first decision, one that was going to change everything. I arrived home that day as someone returning from his own wake. Every step to my door seemed to drag a piece of the woman I had been. I hung up my coat, left my bag on the couch, and went straight to the kitchen, as I always did. But this time there was no tea to warm me, no dishes to wash, no neighbor to visit, just the sound of the clock and the echo of that phrase. The best gift would be if you just died. I repeated this so many times in my head that, for a moment, I began to doubt if I had really heard. But I knew I did. Oh, those words were not spoken in the heat of a fight, nor thrown into the air by mistake. They were chosen, delivered, one in town. Cruel. I sat in the armchair for hours, without turning on the TV, without touching the phone. And when night fell, I got up and went to the closet in the hallway. Inside, in a blue box, I kept everything that was left of my history with Lauren. Photos, notes, cards, drawings from when she still called me my best friend. I took out the box and sat on the floor. It was like opening a chest from another time, a time when I was still needed. I took an old album, leafed through it slowly. Here was 5-year-old Lauren, flushed cheeks and fevered eyes, lying in the hospital. I remembered the pneumonia of the 4 days and 3 nights that I slept sitting next to her without leaving the room. I carried my nurse's uniform in a backpack, changed clothes in the hospital bathroom, took my shift in the emergency room, and came back to be with her. Oh my. I remembered the day she opened her eyes and said, "Wow, wow, you're my hero, Mommy." From that time, she still had the notes from the teachers praising her performance at school, the clothes that I sewed myself for events, the navy blue ballet recital dress, sewn with lace that I bought on sale at a fabric store in Midway. Her smile wearing that dress cost me 3 sleepless nights. I opened an envelope with the college receipts. Boston, $40,000 a year. I worked twice as hard on the line. I sold my car. I took out loans in my name. Everything for her to have the chance that I never had. At her wedding, no, I was the one who paid for the dress, the ceremony, the buffet, $30,000. Central Park. She said it was the dream of her life. And I wanted to do it because that's what I thought a mother should do. Make dreams come true that aren't hers. The most recent investment was in another envelope. The papers for the entrance of the house where she lives today. $100,000. Taken straight from my retirement fund. I remember the day I signed the checks. The lady at the bank asked if I was sure, and I said, yes, it's for my daughter. Now, I always save this money thinking about her. And now, and now, that same daughter told me that the best gift would be my death. The phrase kept circling me as I opened a box of letters. The last one she wrote to me was in 2011, thanking me for having paid for the twins' party. Since then, he has never written to me again, not even a Christmas card. But even so, I kept going. He kept offering me. I continued to believe that this was love. Do you know what hurt the most that night? It wasn't just the phrase. It was the realization that maybe I had lived my whole life loving someone who never wanted my love. I stayed there on the floor until dawn. The sky of Paul was already clearing when I decided to write a sentence in my diary. Just one. Maybe now he'll be allowed to rest. But how to rest? Where? With what forces? It was in this void that, for the first time, an idea began to grow inside me. An idea that seemed to whisper, what if I disappeared? What if I, for the first time, thought only of myself? What if I stopped donating to those who never even returned gratitude? This idea grew, and the next morning, it was no longer a whisper. It was a plan. But a woman of my age starts a new life from scratch. You will understand. Because the first person I looked for was someone who knew the silence of pain very well. And that's when everything started to change. It was 4 days without leaving home. Neither to get the newspaper, nor to open the mailbox. The which I had left on the table when I returned, stayed there until it began to melt on the tray. When the smell invaded the kitchen, I threw it away with trembling hands and an aching heart. As if I were burying a hope, I started to drink coffee sitting in silence. staring out the window, we watching the cars pass by on Frogtown Avenue as if they belonged to another world, a world that I was no longer part of. With each sip, now, the same question crossed me. What if I disappeared? Would anyone miss it? The television was turned off. The cell phone, how? In airplane mode. I received 3 missed calls from the church and 1 from the pharmacy, but I didn't have the courage to return. It was as if my voice had dried up. Even chamomile has lost its taste. The only thing that kept me company were the words of the Bible. I read and reread Proverbs, Psalms, until I reached Exodus. Honor your father and your mother, that your days on earth may be prolonged. I wondered, did she forget? Or did this commandment expire over time? Like so many other promises we make in childhood, I wrote 4 letters that week. Long. Is detailed. In each of them, I tried to tell my story as in my own way. Why? But when it was over, tore it, not out of fear, but out of shame. Shame to realize that, for decades, I loved too much and imposed too little. That I was floor, wall, ceiling. I was never seen as a person. At dawn, on the 5th day, I sat in the armchair with the light off. Only the lamp on the street light outside illuminated part of the room. I closed my eyes and stood there, listening to the noise of the old heater hum. And, for the first time in many years, I felt a different grief. Not the mourning for those who died, but for those who are still alive, only that they cease to exist for you. It is a mute pain, profound. It feels like you're burying someone who keeps breathing, walking around, and soon, but for you, it's gone. Lauren, my girl with blonde braids, who asked for a hug before going to sleep, she no longer existed. And I was also no longer the mother she claimed to admire. But it was in that dark, in that dry solitude, that something began to sprout. Wine. It was not revenge. It was something else. A clarity, a lucidity that only comes after we break down in one piece. It was as if I saw, for the first time, who I really was outside the roles of mother, what, grandmother, how, provider. And that's when I thought, if no one misses me, maybe I can leave without warning, not to cause pain, not to teach lessons, but to give me the one thing that no one has ever offered me back. Peace. No, ill. Still tell you what happened when I made that decision, because that's where the story starts to turn. That's where Pamela, who has always served, decides, for the first time, to choose herself. And when that happened, nothing else was left in place. That morning, I woke up with a different weight on my body. It was not sadness, nor anger, wasted. It was a kind of silent force, one of those that are born when we reach the bottom and realize that the ground will not give way anymore. I made my coffee without sugar, as always. but with a calm that didn't match everything I had felt in the last few days. And it was there, looking at the cracked mug I got from Lauren on an old Christmas, that I made my first decision. I took the landline in the kitchen, dialed the bank number, and asked to speak to the manager responsible for the joint account. That account had existed since 2008. I had opened it for family emergencies. That's what we called it. Now, emergency fund. Emergency. No. For me was illness, accident, a loss. But I realized that there are other forms of emergency. When your soul begins to fall ill in silence, this is also a warning sign. I would like to withdraw $25,000 in cash. The woman at the bank asked me if everything was okay, and for the first time I answered, "No, more to your mind. Yes, now it is." I left the house half an hour later, went to the agency, signed the papers with steady hands, and left with a heavy envelope. It was the weight of my liberation. On the way back, I stopped the car in front of the family's accountant's building. An old man, known to us for more than 20 years. I walked in, sat down in the leather chair, and was blunt. I want to start the process of canceling the mortgage on Lauren's house. He widened his eyes. The house. But you're up to date, Pamela. Are you sure about that? I smiled out of the corner of my mouth and said, She said life would be better without me. I'm just helping to make the wish come true. He did not insist. He just took a deep breath and started typing. I returned home in the late afternoon, took off my shoes at the entrance, and went to the phone. I typed in Lauren's number and blocked it. Then I did the same with Tom. His hands trembled a little, but it was one of relief. Shortly after, the cell phone began to vibrate. Calls from Lauren. After Tom, messages. What's going on? Did you touch the account? Why don't you answer? And then I sent just one sentence to both of them. You said that life would be better without me. In respecting that silence, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was alive. Not because I did anything against them, but because I finally did something for myself. And let me tell you something. Looking you right in the eye now, Ma, there's a time in life when we stop begging for affection and start rescuing self-love. And this time, it is liberating. If you've ever felt this, if you've ever had to move away so as not to destroy yourself, comment here with an I understand you, or it's true. It's good to know that there are other people who have gone through this. Sometimes, no, all we need is to feel less alone on this journey. I didn't know how they were going to react, but I knew that, for the first time, it was not my problem. Because when you see the discomfort in someone's life, the best response is not to scream, it's to disappear. But I still had one more step to take, a step that would change everything. And who helped me make that decision? It was someone that no one expected, someone from my past, who resurfaced just at the right time. Want to know who it was? You'll find out now. It was on the 8th day after the birthday that the phone stopped ringing. The silence, once so desired, was now just confirmation of what I already knew. My absence was making more noise than my presence. It was funny to think about it. I spent years being useful, indispensable, how invisible, merabond, captricia. All I had to do was disappear for a few days. And suddenly I became the center of attention, not out of love, but out of lack. They needed me. But now, for other reasons, on the 9th day, why, the first signs of despair arrived. Lauren left a long, nervous voicemail. He said that the automatic mortgage debit had failed, that the bank called, that she didn't know what was going on, that the twins had a dentist appointment, and that, for some reason, the card linked to the joint account had been declined. Afterwards, she tried the blame tactic. Mom, what are you doing? It's crazy. Call me, Tarzan, please. But I didn't care. Tom, as expected, Law went straight to the point. He sent a message with fewer words and more poison. This is emotional blackmail. What are you wanting? That we bet? I read that and closed my eyes. Old Tom, always objective. Wow. Always reducing everything to control. Strategy. Manipulation. Mine. I didn't answer. Wow. I only saved the messages. All, including Lauren's, which gradually became shorter, more impatient. More aggressive. Mine? Are you taking revenge? Is that it? I didn't expect that from you. And you know what was worse? I didn't expect that from myself either. But something had already changed. I was no longer that woman who apologized even for existing. And when we change inside, on which hand, the world notices and gets scared. I began to organize my things with the same care that a nurse prepares a patient before surgery. I took the documents from the drawer, checked passports, certificates, everything in order. I made an appointment at the Swiss consulate, an old trip that I always postponed. First, because of Lauren's college, then because of the wedding, then because of the grandchildren. Now, maybe it was time. I also called the family's attorney in Minneapolis, a soft-spoken gentleman who always took care of my papers with discretion. I scheduled a face-to-face meeting. It was time to review my will before everything I had was destined for Lauren. The apartment, the savings, the retirement funds, the insurance. Now, one lottery. Not anymore, New Jane. Not for revenge, but for justice. I had spent my whole life taking care of others. And who took care of me? I spent a whole afternoon rereading my notebooks. The old notes, the dates marked with so much love. How was it possible that a lifetime of care could end up being summed up in one sentence? You should die. But it was in this void that something began to flourish, a new version of me. Lighter, wider, firmer. I need you out. I remember writing in my diary that day. It's not revenge. It's a restart. It was on that same day that Lauren showed up at the neighbor's house. Mrs. Madelon, Helen, asking if I was sick, if I had freaked out, if anyone had seen me. She said she was worried, Mom, that he needed to talk to me. Helen House, poor thing, called me in a distressed voice. Pamela, your daughter seems desperate. I thanked him, how, with affection, and asked him not to get involved. Let's see, we, he just said, Mom, I am that tired. Fine, nice orderly, not overstackers, and trying to. Helen, how? For the first time in a long time. Fine, in yesterday. And it's true. I was, because I knew what was going to come next. And what was to come. It was going to change everything. The house, the documents, the names, everything, including who I chose to inherit what I built with so much sacrifice. But before that, something unexpected happened. A call I never expected to receive, and that made my heart stop for a second. Do you know, when the past comes back, but not to hurt you, but to offer you a new chance, that's what I'm going to tell you about now. Because that's when this story starts to really turn. That Saturday, I woke up before the sun touched the windows. I had dreamed of Richard. My husband. He was the way I remember him in the early years of marriage, with that calm smile and the way he always understood everything before I spoke. In the dream, eyes, he would just look at me and say, now, Pam, nay, you've already carried too much. When I woke up, Nunna held. It took me a few minutes to understand where I was. The silent house, the lamp on, the feeling that that dream was not just a dream, but a warning. I got up slowly, now, felt the icy floor under my feet, and went to the kitchen to prepare my coffee. As the coffee maker gave off that hot smell, I whispered to myself, it's today. One child alarm. There was no anger in my voice, nor sadness. It was a quiet acceptance, almost a peace. I knew that if I stayed there, in that life where I was only useful while serving, I would wither away. So I decided to disappear. But for me, not by them. I went to the drawer where I keep my most important documents. I ran my fingers over the certificates, the papers from the old will, the mortgage receipts that I had helped pay for years. I put everything in a blue folder, the same one I used when I solved Richard's paperwork after his death. It seemed symbolic to use the same folder now, as if I were burying another part of my life. Then I sat down at the table with the letters I had torn in the previous days. I picked up one of them, reread the smudged passages of ink, and realized that, even torn apart, it told exactly what I felt. Tiredness, abandonment, exhaustion of giving and never receiving. Folded once, crumpled or not, that letter was part of my truth. I kept them all, including the torn ones, inside a larger envelope. I knew that, at some point, they would have a function. Then I opened the laptop. I researched agencies that specialize in long-term stays for retirees abroad. I found one that offered programs for those who wanted to live in quiet environments, with support, translators and assistants. The first photo that appeared was from Lucerne, Switzerland. No, the wooden bridge, the lake, reflecting the snowy mountains, the clean and silent streets. My chest tightened. Oh, Richard always said he wanted to take me to see the Alps when he retired. When? But life wouldn't let me. And at that moment, I understood that maybe I could go alone, not for lack of him, but to honor who I was with him. I wrote a short email to the agency. I asked prices, conditions, requirements, now, deadlines. They responded in less than an hour with all the information and a huge attachment full of details. It took me almost the whole morning to read everything. But when I finished, I didn't feel afraid. I felt clarity. It was all there, in front of me, like a map, an entire path that didn't depend on Lauren, Tom, the twins, or anyone. Where I could help. It was mine, only mine. No, I picked up the phone. No, I asked. Took a deep breath and hired a belongings guard service to keep some of my things safe during my stay abroad. Small but important things. The wedding rings, the old cards Richard wrote to me in the army, photos of Lauren as a baby, my cookbooks, everything that told the story of who I was before I became just the mother who solves problems. In the early afternoon, I sat in the living room with the blue folder on my lap. I stared at her for a few minutes until I realized she was smiling. A small, discreet, but real smile. I knew what that folder represented. It was the end of an era and the beginning of another. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes, sharing the pain also lights the path of those who are experiencing something similar. I closed the briefcase, got up and started to pack what I really needed to take. Simple clothes. Documents, medicine, and the strange feeling of walking to a destination I would never have dared to choose before. I didn't tell anyone. No church friend. No neighbor. No one. It was the first time I had made a big decision without asking for approval. And this freedom, it hurts and heals at the same time. Later, Bendy, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the blocked cell phone. Lauren and Tom's messages were still there, gathering digital dust. Answer, nay, no one, what can I tell? We need to talk. The bank called. Nay, are you gone? This is crazy. Old Pamela would have answered. The old Pamela would have apologized, asked if the twins were okay, offered help me. But it no longer existed. The woman who was there, named out, this, in that simple room in Frogtown, was another a woman who had learned late in life that love is not prison. And when I turned on airplane mode once again, I felt like I was closing a door. But the funny thing is, When you close a door calmly, I own, well, without shouting, how, without anger, nishildan. That's when another one begins to open up. No, I didn't know it yet, but in the following days, I would do something that would completely change the course of everything. A simple, and there still in the I, and slowly, silent step, but that it was going to turn Lauren's life upside down. You know what? So, come with me, because now is when the story starts to really turn. It was on a rainy Tuesday that I walked into the office of Mr. Halbert, now in the one scene, Halbert, my lawyer, with the blue briefcase under my arm and a look he had never seen on me. He offered me coffee, asked if everything was okay, as he always did, and I just said, "Today I want to erase what I built by mistake." He looked at me over his glasses, unhurriedly, and understood. We sat down together, opened all the documents, and began what I called my silent dismantling. We started with Lauren's private health plan. I paid since the wedding. Well, as a continuous gift. She said she couldn't trust Tom's company's insurance. And I, as always, wanted to protect it. That day, I signed the cancellation. Then, the additional card for my personal credit, the one she used only in an emergency. An emergency that became a manicure, an expensive dinner, an imported toy for children. Oh no. Cut. The bank asked me if I wanted to keep the card under observation. I replied, I want to forget that he ever existed. Then we closed Wells Fargo's joint account. The remaining balance was transferred to my name, all with paper, signature, no tarization, no room for questioning. I also called the accountant, a serious, methodical man who had known me for more than 20 years. I asked her to record a clause in the new will. No financial benefit would be released in Lauren's name. None. The funds I kept for the twins' future cases, about $30,000, would be kept until they turned 25, and they would only be delivered if they were in good legal and moral condition. That was my demand. Because to love is not to surrender everything with your eyes closed. To love, sometimes, is to teach to wait. At the end of the afternoon, I scheduled a medical evaluation. I completed clinical and mental examinations. Everything that could guarantee that, if one day they challenged me in court, they would be dealing with a lucid, conscious, and fully capable woman. How? The doctor, an attentive young woman, listened to me in silence. When I finished explaining, she touched my hand and said, you are doing something for you, and that is beautiful. No, Cancel, I have always been seen as the one who welcomes, that understands, that forgives. But now, for the first time, I didn't want understanding. I wanted limits. And inside me, I began to realize that each signed paper was like a scar being sewn up, a part of me that stopped bleeding. On the way home, stopping at a sign on University Avenue, I looked up at the gray sky and thought, how many women my age have done that and never told anyone with Shondays. Perhaps you, who are listening to me now, are holding on to some of this pain. Oh, And if it is, stay with me, because what will still happen? It will make all this here make sense. When I got home, why, I sat down at the table and wrote a note. Small. The idea was said calm, so about to last short, but full of weight. I decided to live without emotional debt, including the ones that imprisoned me for love. I kept it along with the documents of the will, and that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without putting my phone on the nightstand. There was no one else I expected a call from, but it was the next day that I received an unexpected letter, handwritten, with a sender I hadn't read in nearly 3 decades, and when I opened it, I felt the past was coming back, but not to hurt me. It was something bigger, something that would perhaps change everything I had decided so far. Do you want to know who it was? I'll tell you. Because this part, no one saw coming. The letter arrived in a beige envelope, without a sender's stamp, but with a handwriting that I would recognize, even with my eyes closed. It belonged to Cousin Evelyn, who lived in Wisconsin. We hadn't spoken for more than 25 years, since my mother's funeral. Inside, there were few lines, direct, delicate. Now, that's all car. She said she learned about me from Mrs. Helen Neonown. I'll sit the talk, he said. On the Testament too, who commented at the church meeting that Pamela was too missing for her liking. Evelyn wrote to me saying that she always thought of me, that she remembered the summers we spent together in Stillwater when we were teenagers. And then, as if he had guessed, no, he wrote, now, no, if one day I want to talk, my door is open. How? I closed my eyes for a moment and went back to that time when I was still just Pamela. Not a mother, not a wife, not a nurse. Only Pamela, me, and Evelyn, barefoot in my grandmother's backyard, listening to the radio play Patsy Cline and laughing at silly things. Memories, when they come back from nowhere, well, have this power to scramble everything inside, as if the years had been just a breath. And there are memories that scream, but there are others who whisper, that make us stop and think. Where did we lose ourselves? If you also have a memory that marked you forever, tell us here in the comments. It can be a phrase, a smell, a place. Sharing this warms the chest. I kept Evelyn's letter in a small wooden box, and that same day I made another decision. I took the mortgage contract for Lauren's house. The paperwork was there from when I signed as a co-signer so that they could get approval for the financing. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were sitting at the table on the bench, Lauren holding my hand, saying, "It's just for safety. Mom, well, be able to handle it." And I, as always, saying, "Yes, but now," calmly and with cold eyes, I reread each clause, and there it was, in small but firm letters. As the principal guarantor, what? I was entitled to proportional ownership of the property, as no one else paid that part of the financing except me. For years, it gave me the basis to legally demand what was mine. I returned to the lawyer's office with the blue briefcase under my arm. He flipped through the documents, shook his head, no issue, madame, and said, "Oh, you should never have paid for this alone. But there's still time." We filed a request to cancel the co-subscription. We informed the bank of Lauren and Tom's financial instability, who were now in default, information that, until then, I had been quietly covering, month after month, with my automatic deposits. The bank was quick to react. Lauren was notified of the opening of a mortgage review process. That, in itself, has already shaken her foundations. But I went further. I formally requested the return of the part I invested, $150,000. Exact value of transfers, documented over the years. It was like turning a key in a house that had always been locked for me. For the first time, I moved not as one who pleads, but as one who has the right. And the irony did not go unnoticed. That house, that room, that floor where I heard from my daughter's mouth, the best gift would be if you died. Now he was trembling. He trembled in her hands. Because I, the woman who served the coffee, who swept the toys off the floor, who repaired the faucet, was now the same one who held the base of that structure. And I knew the next move would come. A phone call, a visit, a request. But what I didn't expect, it was the kind of despair that would come on Lauren's face. Because she wasn't just going to lose her house. I was going to lose control. And when that happened, something even deeper revealed itself, something I could never have imagined. Do you want to know what it was? So hold on tight, because now, it is where the truth is fully revealed. I knew I couldn't just disappear and let the silence fill everything. Too much silence becomes an excuse. It becomes denial. I see no candid It becomes a lie told halfway. And I needed her to know, not to justify himself, not to cause pain, but so that one day, when the dust settled, and when dust settled, Lauren could face the reflection she had always avoided. That's why I wrote it. And 18 pages. Nearby, when Shelter went to calm, with my tired but firm handwriting, I wrote for 3 nights. The lamplight on, the sound of the kitchen clock marking the hours that never come back. On each page, I left a part of me, not to blame, but to explain, to narrate in detail who I was during all those years when she only saw a shadow in the background of family photos. I told him about the night shifts at Regions Hospital, when I slept in the locker room between shifts because there was no one to take care of the little Lauren. I told them about the times I didn't buy a new coat to pay for a summer camp, about the nights I sewed hand-dressed dresses because I had no money left. I remembered her 6th birthday, when she hugged me tight and said, "Wow, you are the best mother in the world. What had make you so good?" I wrote with affection, no irony. Because that hug still lived inside. Even if forgotten by her, I also included old photos. One, in particular, made me cry. Lauren, at about 10 years old, Mom, laughing while I held the neighbor's dog. I remembered that day. She had the flu, but wanted to go out to sunbathe. I took the afternoon off, just to make her laugh. I enclosed receipts for bank transfers, payment slips for the wedding in Central Park, $30,000 paid with decades-long sweat, the entrance to the current house, college tuition in Boston? No. All documented. Wow. Everything she said she had achieved alone. I also included excerpts from my diary. I wrote about the days when she didn't answer my calls, about the rejected $200 cake, about the day he told me to die as a gift. I didn't dramatize. I just transcribed it. The truth hurts enough on its own. And at the end of the letter, wow, I wrote like this: Lauren, how? I didn't leave you. I let myself. One idiot. For years, I disappeared in the name of a love that did not know how to protect itself. Now, I decided to come back to myself. And if one day you want to see me for real, start with these pages. They bleed everything I never told you. Folded. Now, I put the letter inside a thick envelope. What? So nice just along with the attachments, and went to Mrs. Helen's house. I explained everything. She listened in silence, holding my hand as if understanding, without needing words. I asked her to leave the envelope on the table at Lauren's house the next morning, saying only that I found it there. Now, next to the door? Now, nice. And that maybe it was important. Helen nodded sadly. My dear Tom, lead you well, on more now. You're doing what needs to be done. Pamela, I returned home. Did a last check on my passport, on the documents from Switzerland. Now, and I felt something empty inside. It was not sadness. It was as if I had taken a weight off my lungs, an air that never entered properly. That night, I didn't cry. I just lay there, now, looking at the ceiling. Ow, remembering the words I didn't write, but that were implicit in every line. Because more than any accusation, what I left in that letter was a mirror, and what would come next, when she finally read it, when that truth trickled down her hands like fresh paint, would change everything. But before that, something even more unexpected was about to happen. A reunion that not even time could erase, and that would change the destiny I thought I had traced alone. Do you want to know who knocked on my door? Just wait and see. The airport was cold, even inside the terminal. Maybe it was the air conditioning, or maybe it was the weight of the last few hours that left me with my shoulders hunched, like someone who carries a winter inside his chest. I had already checked my luggage, had a weak coffee in a snack bar, and now I was sitting on one of those metal benches near the boarding gate, holding my cell phone with both hands. The flight to Zurich would leave at 10:14 p.m. There were 22 minutes left. Oh, I took a deep breath and typed in the number. It wasn't Lauren's. It was the fixed number of the house. I knew that the boys were not going to answer. They would probably be sleeping. But still, I waited for the voicemail. When I heard the bell, my voice came out calmly but firmly. My loves, it's Grandma. I'm leaving far away. today. Maybe you don't understand it now, but one day you will understand that love also knows how to leave when it is no longer welcome. I love you. I I will always love. And if one day you miss it, well, look in the memories. Ah, it'll be there. Oh, Lutano. I hung up without haste. Well, no crying, no hurt, only love. Love that has learned not to beg. Then I deleted Lauren's number. Then Tom's. The contacts of the school. Wow. The pediatrician. The nanny that I helped to hire. I erased them one by one, as if tidying up a drawer full of old letters that no longer say anything. I opened the bank's app. The joint account was closed. The transfers had ceased. The amount, well, fraud has been officially cancelled. The will signed, recognized, sealed, and in show pile. The last mortgage installment. Now it hung only on them. And I didn't feel heaviness. I felt light. As soon as I arrived in Zurich late the next morning, I activated my new phone line. New number. Why? New life. I also opened a bank account under my maiden name, Pamela Eisen. I hadn't seen this name printed on anything for years. And when I saw it, I felt as if I was rediscovering a part of me that was buried with Richard, but that now returned to the surface. Alive at the train. Whoa, wow. I took the line to Lucerne. The window of the wagon showed the snow-capped mountains and lakes as blue mirrors. I took a deep breath. For the first time in 72 years, I felt that the air entering my lungs was mine alone. Arriving at the small apartment I rented for the first 6 months, I connected the Wi-Fi, wrote a short email to Mr. Halbert Nerdia, confirming that the documents were all with him. He replied within minutes. Why is you all calm? I just each sort within minutes. All right. Now, just live. I closed my laptop. Took off my shoes and walked barefoot across the wooden floor. I opened the window. The cold air hit my face like an unexpected hug. And in that instant, wow, I understood. I didn't want a rematch. He never wanted to. I wanted air. I wanted space. I wanted peace. But before I could lie down to rest from the trip, I heard a sound coming from the door. 3 soft beats, a hesitant touch, and there, down, on the other side, was someone I never thought would have the courage to follow me. Can you imagine who it was? Because even I couldn't. When I opened the door that morning, I confess that my heart leaped. But it wasn't Lauren, nor Tom. It was the young lady who took care of the building. Nutai. I was just coming to bring a letter that arrived at the reception with my full name and no sender. The envelope was thick, heavy, with unspoken words. But at that moment, I still didn't want to open it. I left it on the living room table, next to the kettle, as if knowing that certain truths need time to boil. Meanwhile, den Houtstone, on I don't know to hear, and Stangy Sages too. On the other side of the ocean, Chaos ensued. Now, Lauren had finally understood. I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't in town. Huh? I was not in the state. He was not in the country. The mother she dismissed as if changing a piece of furniture had done the unthinkable. Gone, without a trace, or better, without leaving a visible trace, because the traces were in the cancelled contracts, in the clauses of the will, in the phone blocks, in the zeroed bank statements. The bank began to press the portion of the mortgage due. Then the second, as you kid one, on the Marcia the second, her name began to appear as delinquent. Notifications arrived by email, by letter, Leonard, and the Colonel to second, I spoke at second, by message, and she, used to throwing the blame in my lap, now found herself with no one to blame, except herself. Tom tried to contact my lawyer. He sent long emails, polite messages. Some, not so much. He tried to appeal to reason, to ethics, even to religion. Nothing was answered. My silence was my defense. It was then that Lauren tried a desperate move. She turned to social services. He claimed that I might have dementia, that I had fled in an emotional breakdown, that I might be at risk. She was received with some respect, after all. It was her worried daughter. But what she didn't expect was that, even before leaving the United States, I had already prepared everything. The medical reports, the psychological statements, the legal records were all organized, signed, sent, all from the consulate to the insurance company. Everyone was aware of my lucidity. When the county officials consulted the documentation, they gave the opinion, there are no signs of incapacity. Pamela Eisen is in full possession of the mental faculties. He moved to another country of his own volition. What's more, there is no legal obligation for her to her daughter or son-in-law. This news fell like a thunderbolt on her. And from what they told me afterwards, because yes, even the neighbors began to write to me in secret. The house that was once the scene of contempt became a stronghold of whispers. The neighborhood whispered when the children no longer seemed so comfortable. Lauren's gaze, once haughty, was now that of someone who had lost the map. And look, all this happened without me having to scream. No slamming doors, no threats, only with silence. The silence. The silence. He is the one who scares the most, because he has nowhere to hold on. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. That late afternoon in Lucerne, with the golden light streaming in from the balcony, I prepared my tea, grabbed the thick envelope from the small table, and finally opened it. Inside, there was a letter. I'm sent to what the chapter, but not Lawrence. It was the twins. And what they wrote, it took me apart. but it also showed me that all is not lost. You need to hear that, because it's perhaps the most unexpected part of this whole story. The envelope had thin paper, the kind that wrinkles easily, and the little crooked letters of a child. My eyes watered before I even finished reading the first paragraph. Grandma, we miss you. Mom doesn't let us talk about you anymore, but we talk anyway. Hidden, hide. We remembered the chocolate cake you made. Dad tried, but it got really bad. I laughed with sadness and tenderness. The rest of the letter was a tangle of short sentences, cribbles of pure affection. Do you still like squirrels? And you're doing, yeah, mouse. When are you coming back? No. We're going to be big soon, and then you can go wherever you are. I kept the letter inside the book I was reading in the reading group, a Swiss novel about reunions and silences. I left it there as a real-life bookmark. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept with a slight smile. Lucerne has a kind of peace that seems to come from the ground, from the surrounding mountains, from the calm pace of the people. My routine has taken on a new tone. I wake up early, prepare my coffee, go for a walk along the shores of the lake, and on Tuesdays I participate in watercolor classes with other ladies who, like me, decided to live what was left with dignity. I painted my first painting in decades. It was simple. I do buy an old forest outlet, an open window, and in the background, wow, the Alps. I put it on the sideboard in the living room. That's where my new identity rests. A woman who chose not to be a martyr. The final documents were sent to the bank in the United States. My lawyer, always accurate, attached everything that was missing to make official the demand for restitution of my investment in the mortgage. The emails were exchanged in silence. No phone calls. No scenes. And then the confirmation came. Mrs. Pamela, the bank recognized your right to the full return of the amount invested in the property. The sum of $150, zero, will be transferred with accrued interest. I sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. It wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about acknowledging, for the first time, that I wasn't invisible. My investments here have also flourished. The small fund I transferred to a Swiss manager yielded well. I have security. Accounts, income. Now at the I have my books, my walks, and now even a small group that calls me Pam and the German group for beginners. On the other side of the ocean, I know that Lauren faces colder days than this fall. Bills that arrive, blocked cards, suspicious looks from neighbors. Tom lost the annual bonus. The car was sold. And the house, one day's. Well, the house now carries an echo, not mine, the echo of the emptiness that she herself created. But I don't wish her ruin. I never wished. I just wish she learns. May one day look back and see clearly who has sustained her in silence during all those years. Because silence, my dear, is a double-edged sword. It can hurt, Leon, but it can also heal. And look, if you've come this far, It's because something in this story touched you too. And let me tell you, what comes now, in the last steps of this journey, is what I keep as the most remarkable moment of all. Sometimes it is at the end of the road that we find the beginning of a new one. But before that fresh start arrived, one last surprise was about to happen. An old name came up on the display of my new phone. A name I haven't seen since before Lauren was born. And that name changed everything. Can you imagine who it was? Because that's when everything turned. Once again, oh, once. The name on the display was that of an old hospital colleague, someone who worked with me in the days when I was working double shifts at Regions, caring for patients at the end of their lives with the same zeal with which I cared for Lauren. Still, a little girl. It was Dr. Mitchell. Nettie's now retired pal, who was now collaborating with an American institution that hosted real stories of the elderly for a project on dignity and reconstruction. He had read my account, which I sent anonymously to an expatriate forum, and wanted to invite me to share on video this part of my life. I didn't think twice. I recorded on a wooden bench, with the Alps in the background. No, and spoke with my soul, without attacking anyone. Without naming names. I only told what a woman experienced when she was discarded by her own daughter. And how. Even so, no, she chose silence as revenge and freedom as a prize. The video was published on a channel about stories of overcoming. We didn't expect much, but in the following weeks, something happened. The story won the world. Messages, letters, flowers began to arrive in the building. You gave me courage. I remembered my mother, and I cried. I wanted to hug you, and it was thus, by irony of fate, that my voice, silent for so long, echoed more than I imagined. Meanwhile, in St. Paul, Lauren and Tom had already lost their home. The bank foreclosed on the mortgage, and the property went to auction. They moved into a small, two-bedroom apartment in a modest condominium in the northern part of the city. Tom got a job as an app driver. Lauren, who for years has been critical of teachers' salaries, has returned to teaching at a public school in the suburbs. The twins, who are now 8 years old, have started asking more. They wanted to know why Grandma never sent cards again, why she didn't show up at the school recital. Why she disappeared. Lauren said I was traveling, but all it took was a video, a share, a conversation in the schoolyard. And everything came to light. One of the classmates showed the video on his cell phone. Is that your grandmother? Lauren saw it all for the first time that night, sitting on the cheap sofa of the new apartment. With a dim light illuminating her face, she saw the mother who once called a weight become a symbol of strength, of dignity, of a love that knew how to stop bleeding. The comments, a silent massacre. This woman was a saint. He gave everything, and he only reacted when he had already lost everything. What an ungrateful daughter. It makes you want to cry with anger. She is a mirror for many of us. And in that moment, Lauren understood. I hadn't lost only comfort, only status, only the security of the house. She lost something that cannot be bought, rebuilt, replaced, rest up high. She lost respect. She lost the purest symbol her life has ever had. And me, I kept living. I didn't celebrate their fall until I died. I did not toast to ruin. I just felt that the cycle was closing because sometimes justice is not a sentence. It is a silence that echoes. But what Lauren did next, what she had the courage to write, it was something I didn't expect. Do you want to know what it was? So wait, Leo, because what comes next, Tom, I still don't know if it was redemption or just another attempt to reverse the irreversible. It was late afternoon when I sat on the porch, with the notebook on my lap and the pen between my fingers. The sky over Lucerne was in shades of lavender and gold, and the sound of the church bell in the distance seemed to lull me like an old lull. I took a blanket, covered my legs, and wrote, Today, Neptune. At last, I understood that to love is also to know how to leave. Not angry, not with vengeance, but with dignity. For so many years, I confused love with servitude. I believed that being a mother was to annul myself, erase my desires, silence my pain, smile even when the soul screamed. I thought that a good mother was one who stayed until the end, even when the end had come a long time ago. Today I know being a mother is being a root. Yes, but even the roots get sick if the soil is too toxic. I've been thinking a lot about the boys. What about you? In the twins, in the sound of their giggles running around the house, in the drawings pasted on my fridge, in the hugs with the smell of chocolate cookies. I love them with all my soul, but I learned to love from afar, because sometimes the truest love is the one that doesn't invade, that doesn't force, that doesn't scream. It is love that waits, quietly, for the truth to mature on the other side. When others still on, I looked around. My vases with lavender grew strong. Last week's watercolor was drying on the easel, right next to the photo of Harold, my late husband, which I took with me in a pocket picture frame. I have felt a peace that I had never felt in the last 30 years, not because everything was resolved, but because, finally, I resolved myself. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson of old age. We don't control what they do with our love, but we can decide what to do with what is left of it. And what was left of me, I planted here on this balcony, in this city, in this tired but free body. I wrote a few more lines in my diary. My old age is not an end. It's a late winter, cold on the outside, but about to bloom on the inside. And I have loosed. I went back to singing alone around the house. I bake bread on the weekends. I receive letters from other women who have experienced similar things. Women who call me inspiration, but who have no idea that they were the ones who kept me standing. Yes, I flourished at the age of 73 on another continent, in another soul. But yesterday, oh, yesterday I received a different letter. The envelope was crumpled, with no clear sender. Wow. The handwriting was hesitant. The seal came from the United States. I would recognize that letter anywhere. It was hers, by Lauren Payon. And what was written there? Well, Silvan. It was like a warm breeze in the middle of the ice. But is a breeze enough to melt what is frozen inside? You need to listen to what she told me. Because maybe, perhaps there is an end that is not the end. Lauren's letter did not ask for forgiveness. He brought no tears or promises. It was short. He only said that he now understood. Why? That she watched the video, read the comments, and that something in her had broken, perhaps for the first time. She said that the boys asked about me almost every day, and that she didn't know what else to answer. He asked not for my return, but for my peace. I folded the letter carefully, put it in the envelope, and left it on the table, next to the diary. I didn't cry. He doesn't smile. I just breathed. There was the end I needed. It was not a new beginning with remade ties, but a dignified, clean closure, like a page that we turn without tearing. Tom, as far as he knows, continues to work, now in silence. Lauren got back up from the ground with her own legs, and I continue here, between the lake and the Alps, walking in the morning with my light blue scarf around my neck, listening to the sound of the bells and feeling the chill on my cheeks. I am at peace because I finally understood that the worst loneliness is not being alone. It's being surrounded by those who only want you for convenience, and that a mother's love, as beautiful as it is not a blank check that can be cashed endlessly. There's a time to be silent. There's a time to serve. But there is also a time to leave. And when we go out of self-love, it's not abandonment. It's rebirth. If I could leave a single lesson here, it would be this. Don't wait for love to turn into a burden to realize your own value. Sometimes what looks like weakness is actually tired courage. And only when we stop asking for love do we understand what we really deserve. I went down. I went to the ceiling. No, I was everything. Today, I am just me, and that, for the first time, is enough. Thank you for staying here with me. Telling this story was like opening a box that had been closed for decades. If somehow she touched you, will you do me a favor? Enjoy this video. It's like a warm hug that reaches me right from here. And subscribe to the channel. What a day am I do I will bold with. So we meet at the next cafe with another one of those stories that heat up and hurt at the same time. Also tell me, in the comments, which city you are listening to me from. And guys, I love knowing where every heart that has sat with me today comes from. And it activates the bell. See? We are That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. No sound. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.